right. So someone spent $1,000 on a new truck repairs, $645 on a new microwave. So we've got food, we have groceries always, vet care, small smoothie. Yep. Groceries, fitness tracker, lots of great things. Okay. So to get started, what items on here do we as a group consider to be needs versus wants? And just a refresher, a want is something that, of course, we would like to have, but it isn't something that that it's mandatory for us to have to stay alive. But things like groceries, depending on food groceries are things that we may need, right? So what are a couple of things on here that are needs that we've shared?
Car repair.
Okay. Yep. Oh, we've got gas for a car. Yep. That will be a need also. The car repairs and anything that includes your ability to get to and from your job or somewhere that you need to go to live, that could be a need. Yep. I mean, you could argue, let's see. Let me see who said it first. Is it Baby? That her small smoothie could be a need or a want, depending on where you are in your day. But the key thing, it sounds like everyone spent some money this week and on a variety of different things. The key here is to remember as we're going through that a need is something that is essential for you to have, and a want is something fun, but you could live without. So this is something I constantly say to my children, right? So I have a 14-year-old teenage daughter and a 26-year-old millennial stepdaughter. And whenever they say they want something, or whenever they say, I need this, I'll say, was that a need or a want? Or, if we, the other day, my stepdaughter went and got she loves crafting. So she goes all the time to Michael's or Hobby Lobby. And I was like, was that a need or a want? And she'll be like, it's a need because I needed this color paint. And I'm like, it's not a need, So this is just a reminder of our needs versus wants and what we prioritize. So this goes in line with the next thing we're going to talk about, which is our values. So your values are, the ideas and beliefs that are important to you. And the reason why our values are important to the conversation about budgeting today is because when you're dealing with money, you may not realize it, but a lot of times your thoughts and beliefs and decisions that you make with money are shaped by what you place priority on and what you value. So I want you to think, we're not going to share these necessarily, but I do want you to think about this for yourself as we get started today. What are the most important things in your life? And why are these things important to you? And so just take a couple seconds to think about that. If you want, you can write it down for your own benefit. And so what we'll be doing today, as in the context of building a better budget, is I'll be asking you to think about those values in helping create goals for your budgeting purposes. So, thinking about what are the 3 or 4 most important things in your life is important, and, how we can build our financial goals around that. All right. Okay. And finally, the other thing to think about before we jump right in is your financial goals. So again, we're not going to necessarily share these, but think about why you are here today. What made you sign up for this workshop today? And what are you here to achieve? What do you want to learn? And what are your personal goals around this topic today? So actually, we can take a moment and share if you're if you'd like to, what one of your financial goals might be. Is it, saving for retirement, or just having a savings account, like an emergency savings account? Go ahead and tell me in the chat what some of your goals might be. Okay, saving for tires for a car. That's a good one. They're expensive whenever you have to pay for those. Travel account, paying off medical bills, retirement, saving for college, paying off credit card. Excellent. Okay, so this is great. So the purchase a new car, great. These are great goals. They're individual, right, to you and what it means to you. But these are exactly the type of goals that I had hoped to see. Paying for dental bills, that is something my stepdaughter is dealing with right now. And yep, so saving for retirement. Perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and get started, and let's so that we can figure out how we can reach these goals, right, together. All right, so what do you think of when you hear the word budget? Anyone want to share? And if you want to, you can come off mute and do that.
I think it's creating a manageable system to provide for daily needs, to create an emergency fund, and to have a little bit extra for just fun and play.
Very good. Yeah, very good. Anyone else want to add to what Kathleen shared? Okay. I'm not seeing anybody. That's okay. So for some people in the world, the word budget can mean the same thing as denial, right? So it can mean the same thing as I can't afford it, or it could have a negative connotation. A well-designed budget is actually the best way to reach your financial goals and to achieve your financial independence. So I know for me growing up, the word budget was a tough word in our household. And a lot of times, it may mean that you can't have, or you may think that it means that you can't have the things that you want, but actually a budget is simply a written plan of your income and your expenses, and your ability to track those. So a budget helps us prepare to meet our financial goals while also having some money on hand for unexpected expenses. And, what are some examples of unexpected expenses? Well, we have some already that some of you are saving for or want to achieve. Things like tires for your car, medical bills can be an unexpected events, having to end up at the doctor or the hospital, saving for an emergency, paying off dental bills, all of that can be unexpected expenses. Yesterday, I had to travel for work. I had to go to Wytheville, Virginia, where we have another branch, and another rock hit my windshield, which happened to me in November. And now I have to get my windshield repaired again. So that is, I'm going to have to pay a deductible, right, that I didn't budget for this month. To get that windshield fixed, but it will have to be fixed. So, those are some examples of unexpected expenses. Oh, we go into the next one. There we go. Okay. Let me make sure I didn't skip a slide. Okay, well, we'll just go ahead here. All right, so what are some obstacles? Obviously when we are doing a budget, some of us don't have a budget. Maybe we've never written a budget, and others may have a budget, but some obstacles like to getting started, you can keep putting off, I need to do a budget. I'll do a budget next month. That kind of thing. So it's easy to procrastinate on a task like this. Maybe you're feeling like there's never enough money. And so, you just feel like you don't have enough money to even do a budget or even talk about savings. It can be hard to also confront past decisions. Maybe you've made some financial choices that weren't necessarily the best at the time, or you are finding yourself in debt or something like that. And it can be hard to address that in your head and, you know, come to terms with the fact that you can make some different decisions moving forward. And maybe your goals are overwhelming. Maybe, you know, your goal to save for retirement, it just feels so hard and you don't understand all the words involved or the terms involved. That could be the case. Or, you know, afraid of making changes. You just fear having to make some changes or your lifestyle changes that will help you save money, but maybe they're changes you don't think that you'd like to make, or maybe they're a change that you think might upset someone else in your household. So those are some reasons why we don't necessarily get started with our budget as soon as we should, but you can start anytime. And so I'm glad that you're here today. All right, so where do you start? Well, first of all, we've already talked about our goals and you've shared some of those with us, so that was great. How long will your budget be used? So you want to think about, is this, for example, if you're saving for tires, someone was saving for tires, you know, if you need to get them within the next 3 months or 6 months, is, you know, is this a short-term budget to get you to that point? Or, you know, something like saving for your child's college could be more of a long-term budget. How much income do you have available to you? What are your expenses? So we'll talk about these two in more in depth in just a minute. And then we'll also talk about how you will adjust your budget when you need to do so. Okay. All right, so why budget, Renee? Why are we in this class? Well, the first thing, you want to make the most of the money that you are getting. You want to be financially secure. I think that's a goal that everyone has, not needing to rely on your family or friends to help you out, just being able to handle your bills yourself. And then, of course, achieving your goals, like we've talked about, saving for those expenses that you may have, paying off debt, and creating savings. Okay, so the big golden rule before we get started is that your expenses should be less than your income. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but this is something to remember as we go forward. That's the goal of what we're talking about today when it comes to a budget, is tracking your income, tracking your expenses, and your expenses should be less than your income. All right, so here's what we're going to tackle today. We're going to learn about SMART goals. We're going to talk about tracking, building the budget, and adjusting the budget. So let's get started. SMART goals. Has anyone ever heard of SMART goals? And if you have, you know, there is a little emoji button at the bottom where you can give me a thumbs up, or you can just look at the camera and give me a thumbs up if you've heard of SMART goals before. All right. Okay, I'm seeing a couple. Yep, so we're going to get into it. So SMART goals are, this is an acronym, SMART, the word SMART letters, to help you remember what SMART goals are. So SMART goals are specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're realistic, and they're time bound. So let me give you an example. So in the chat, when I asked you, you know, what was your financial goal? If you wrote, and I think someone wrote buying a car, right? Purchasing a car. So let's make that a SMART goal together right now. So how can we make that specific? So I'll tell you a couple, and then hopefully you guys will jump in and participate on the other letters. Let me show you an example. We want to buy a car, but do we know what type of car we want to buy? Do we want to buy it by a certain date? You know, how much do we want to spend? Like, what is our actual specific part of the goal? So is it buying a red car? Is it buying a used car that's under $20,000? Is it buying, so those are ways that you would make it more specific. So how can we measure that? So for example, if you are using a date or an amount of money, those are ways that you can measure it. So if you say, another example would be, I want to lose weight, right? That's not a budgeting example, but this is where you can use it in your real life. Well, what you need to do is think about, how can I make that more specific? I want to lose 10 pounds by Easter. Makes it more specific and therefore measurable so that I'll know when Easter comes if I did or did not do it. So some of the goals that each of you shared in terms of, whoever it was that said they wanted to buy tires. So you probably have a dollar figure in mind for how much tires cost. So a way to make that more specific and measurable would be to say, I'm going to buy 4 new tires, or maybe it's 2 tires, and I'm not going to spend more than this amount. That's a way to make it measurable. Is your goal attainable? Is it a real goal that you can actually achieve? And sometimes this can get a little out of hand with teenagers when we do this type of class, because they'll say, oh, I want to be in the NFL. Well, okay, everybody wants to do that. But is it realistic? If you're not already playing football, then it probably isn't. But in terms of what we're talking about today, is this the goals that you listed? Do you believe that you can actually achieve them? Is your goal too easy? Maybe it's something that, you say, by the end of this week, I want to save $1. Well, that might be too easy for you. You may be in a position where that would just happen automatically. And so you also have to think about it. Is it too hard? Is your goal relevant? Does it mean something to you? Is it attached to your values? This is all what the A for attainable stands for. The R for realistic is similar in that, is this something that can actually be done by the date or the time frame that you set out in the specific part of your goal? So it sort of all relates to each other. So is this something you could actually do with where you are right now, or that you believe that you could do, which is important? And then T is the time bound part. Like I mentioned, how long will it take you to do this? For the person who said they're saving for their child's college, that has a time bound on it, right? So, depending on how old your child is, that you have 4 or 5 years, however long to do that. Some of you may have a couple months to make a change or something like that. So this is what a SMART goal is. And so on your own time today, you may want to think back about the goal that you listed and how you can make it a SMART goal. SMART goals can also be used throughout your life. This isn't just something attached to money. I mentioned the example about how to lose weight. I want to lose weight. I want to do this. When my daughter was younger, I had a goal, and I think every mom has this goal, that their child needs to be potty trained before they are 3. And that is a SMART goal because daycares require that your child be potty trained by the time they're 3. So that's something that is specific and time bound and, meets the requirements of a SMART goal. Or perhaps you have a goal, I want to buy my new car before I turn 40, or, I want to move to this town, to Charlotte or somewhere before I turn 50. Those are examples of SMART goals. Does anybody have questions or comments about SMART goals before we move on? And feel free to take yourself off mute to ask them or put them in the chat. Okay. I'm not seeing any right this minute. So, all right, let's move on to tracking income and expenses. All right, here are just a couple of types of income. A paycheck is an obvious type of income, but Social Security, disability, and unemployment are other forms of income that you or your spouse or family member in your household may be receiving. Child support or alimony may also be types of income. as well as cash from relatives or friends, gifts that you get for your birthday. Maybe you get gift cards, those types of things. Can anybody have any other ideas of types of income that they like to share in the chat or out loud? I see somebody coming off mute. Yes. Okay. Selling online items. Oh, that's a very good one. Yes. As well as selling to consignment stores or, those types of things. I'm not sure if anyone here is doing those things, but I recently, my girls and I packed up all the books in our house that we're not, that we're done with, and we're getting ready to sell them back to a local used bookstore because we just don't need them in our house. So that's a way that we, the income will be nominal, but it will be every little bit, matters and adds up. So very good. Thank you. Tax returns, yes, money from investment property. Exactly. These are all great examples. And let me say something about the tax returns while we're at this one. When you get a tax refund, it's very tempting to go and spend that on, and maybe you have a need, right? This goes back to needs and wants that you do need to spend it on. Maybe tires are that need. But a lot of times we don't have a specific thing that we've been wanting for a long time or a goal that we can achieve with those funds. And that's a good time to put that money away in a savings account, let it earn a little bit of interest, which we'll talk about in a second, while you are thinking about how to use that money. So very good. And then yes, investment property, exactly. All right. Now let's take a look at types of expenses. So I'd like to just give a moment for you to type into the chat what you think the difference between fixed and variable expenses is. I think some folks are probably typing. Okay, let's see. Fixed, maybe a mortgage or utilities, things that don't fluctuate, right? Expenses that change from month to month versus expenses that are always the same. Exactly. Yes, that's exactly right. Fixed is monthly expenses like rent, mortgage, utilities, car, note, etc. Yeah. So yes. So anything that is fixed equals things that are the same every time that you pay them. So this may be the case for your mortgage or your car loan, depending on how your mortgage and car loan are set up. It could be the case for utilities. It could also be the case that your utilities are variable, depending on how much electricity you use during a month. It might fluctuate month to month. So the term variable means that it's a different amount every time you pay it. So cell phones, right? So originally, back in the day, my cell phone bill would fluctuate, right? Depending on how much time or data or whatever I used during the month. And then I was able to get my cell phone bill together so that it is the same price, that I pay the same every month now. And so it went from being a variable expense to a fixed expense. Yes, other examples of variable expenses are gas. As we know right now, it's fluctuating quite a bit. Food costs can be a variable expense for sure. And, clothing, other needs that you have that might be variable, other things that you're paying that are services that you're paying for that are not necessarily fixed, right? So like at our house, our mortgage and our car loans and our cell phones and insurance are all the same amount, but we do have some variety on our utilities in terms of right now our utility bills are a lot higher than they normally are because it's been so cold and we've had all that snow. So we've been using heat quite a bit much more than we would say in the spring or fall. So that's a variable expense. Some of the medical bills that we have are also variable. Although if you work with a hospital and you're able to get the set amount each month, then it becomes a fixed expense. So these are the types of expenses, the categories of expenses that you will have, and everything will fall into one of these two categories of expenses. Which one do you think is easier to make a change to if you needed to cut back in your budget, if you needed to find some money quickly and cut some things out? Okay, yeah, variable. Yes, someone answered variable. Yeah, variable, exactly. So, when you're looking at your budget and perhaps your income, your expenses are more than your income, and you're saying to yourself, I need to make some changes. The first place you would look is not your mortgage, right? So you would think about some of the other, not only what you're paying in terms of like eating out or groceries or things like that, but there may be some other utilities like your cell phone where you could make a change to that data plan or to the way you have your bill set up and save some money. So very good, very good. All right, now we're going to talk about paying yourself first. So we're going to track our income, which we'll talk about, how I'll show you a sheet in a minute about how you do that. We're going to make a list of everything that's income. We're going to make a list of everything that's an expense. And then the first thing that we would need to do with our budget is pay yourself first. And, Renee, what do you mean? Like, this is when you're actually treating yourself like you are a company that is, a utility provider or provides a mortgage or something. You're going to actually pay yourself just like you pay a bill. And so when we have money, when we make money, we spend money that we make, right? And so you may think like, hey, I got a raise over the last year, but it seems like I'm still not saving any money. Well, that's because when we know we have more money, we spend more money. You can also automate some of this. Truliant has a couple of account options. We have something called a rainy day savings account and a holiday account. These types of accounts actually take the change in your checking account and move it to a savings account automatically, so you don't have to take any action. And then you'll be amazed at how fast that adds up. So that, something like that may be an option. Don't wait until after you've paid all your bills and then say, well, how much money do I have left to pay myself? You want to count yourself as an actual expense. The reasons why you would pay yourself first is because it's like money that you never even had, right? So if you just go ahead and say that I'm going to pay myself, it doesn't have to be a lot. It could be $5 a month or a paycheck, $10. It could be $100. It's up to you. The reason why, you just go ahead and move it, it's like you never even had the money. You just put it into the other account. You can also avoid debt this way. It can help you reach your financial goals much easier when you're saving in small amounts than if you try to wait until you have a big amount like a tax refund to go ahead and start your savings. And also I mentioned that deposited money can grow with interest. So interest essentially, when you put money into a bank or a credit union and an account gains interest, what that means is that you're going to earn money on the money that you have in that account. And that happens automatically as well. So if you're in an interest bearing account and maybe it's 10%, let's say, it's usually not that high, but let's say it is for the math, and I have $100 in there. That means at the end of the month, I'm going to have $110 in there, and I haven't done anything else. I haven't taken any action. It's just bearing interest. Excuse me. So these are reasons why you would want to pay yourself first. Now, how much are you willing to pay yourself? Well, this goes back to your values and the goals that you set out and what you're trying to attain. So, if you said, something that's really important to me is that I go back to school and finish a degree or something like that, then you'll know in your head how much you're willing to put aside for that based on how important it is to you and how much you need to save, right? Hold on one second. Excuse me. So that is a question that you will have to answer for yourself. But believe me, everyone here can find a way to save a very small amount of money, even if it's pennies, like I mentioned, an account that just automatically transfers your change, or it's a larger, $1, $5, $10, something like that in that range. Excuse me. I am just getting over COVID. This is like the 3rd or 4th week. So when I get coughing, sometimes I can't stop. So give me just a minute. I'm going to take a drink. Okay. All right. So next, let's talk about paying your bills and how we're tracking things. Paying your bills. I like to go over this. Not everyone goes over this in this type of conversation, but I want to make sure that you guys know when you're prioritizing how you're going to pay your bills, this is the way that you prioritize that. You always pay your mortgage or rent first. Mortgages and rents are things that could be taken away or cause you to lose your housing. So you always pay those first, and they tend to be the largest expense that you're paying. Your car loan or transportation costs, you also pay at the top priority because you need these to stay employed a lot of times. And also, your car is something that could also be repossessed if you miss payments on it, depending on who your bank may be. So these are physical, tangible assets that belong to you that could be taken away if you miss a payment, okay, or miss a lot of payments. Childcare. So anything that has to do anything that would cause you to lose your job or lose employment, you need to pay first. So childcare is another one that if the ability to work is dependent upon if your children are in childcare, that's something you need to prioritize. Utilities are next. And you may say, Renee, why is utilities at the end? Well, I worked at a couple of nonprofits in my past life, like Crisis Control Ministry here in Winston-Salem, these types of organizations that do the emergency funding for people that are having unexpected expenses. Utilities they will cut your utilities off, but it takes a while to do that. So you have to miss a lot of payments, and you get a lot of notices about that occurring. And so that's why that one is further down the list. I'm still not telling you to not pay it, but you should pay it. But that's why it's not number one. Okay. Now, last is credit cards and other debts. Anyone want to take a guess on the chat as to why credit cards? I'm telling you not to prioritize credit cards over any of these other things. Anyone have a guess on credit cards? Okay, I'll tell you. Let me say one more thing about utilities. There's a couple of utilities you probably can't live without. One is water, power, but something like cable, if you miss your cable bill payment, you can live without cable. I know your kids probably think you can't, maybe your spouse thinks you can't, but you can. So that's another reason why utilities isn't top notch. Credit cards, if you miss payments on your credit cards, no one can come and take away your stuff, okay? So if you've charged things on your credit card, if you miss payments, what happens is it costs you more the next month, right? So you'll get a fee for not making a payment, the minimum payment. You should always make the minimum payment on a credit card so you don't incur additional fees. But no one can come to your house and take away things that you've put on your credit card. So the credit card is why the credit card is further down the list. Again, I'm not telling you not to pay it. You absolutely should be paying your minimum credit card payment unless you really can't afford that. And then you can reach out to your bank or credit union to see if you can consolidate some of your credit card debt or other debt, student loan debt, other things that you may have to get those paid. But that's why credit cards are not the number one priority, because with the other things, an action will take place that will harm you in a way that could hurt your credit and those types of things. So you want to make sure you pay the other ones first. Questions about that? Okay. I'm not seeing any yet. So, all right. So now we're going to track where it all goes, right? So you're going to write down the process of doing a budget. You're going to write down all of your income. So literally just get a sheet of paper out, write down what your income is, all the sources, child support, paychecks, maybe you work multiple jobs, maybe you're also getting some Social Security for a family member. And then also tracking your receipts. Tracking your expenses and saving your receipts so that you know exactly how much you spent on gas, for example, or the groceries this month. So you'll want to also write those down. Using your debit or credit cards, so the info is captured on your account statement. So when you pay with cash, there's not a paper trail of how much you actually spent. When you pay with a debit card, which debit cards, remember, are tied to your checking account. They're not a credit card. So when you swipe them, the money immediately comes out, or usually within a day comes out of your checking account and is paid to the vendor. So that leaves a paper trail. So you can see exactly how much you spent, right? So if you're going to McDonald's and you're getting a smoothie and you use your debit card, and then you can look and see, gosh, I did that 5 times last week, right? So you can add up what amount of money you were spending. You can also use expense tracking like software, or there's some apps that can track budgets for you. You've probably seen them advertised. And obviously your bank or credit union also offers a way to keep up with your budget. What it looks like at Truliant is, it shows you what % of money you spent this month on housing. And that includes your mortgage and insurance, on transportation, on dining out, on entertainment. It breaks it down for you so you can see in real time, like where you can make some changes or how much you're spending. All right. All right, so let's get into the budgeting some more. Again, I suggested you use a paper form. There are online budgeting tools as well. You can use a spreadsheet. You can use a notebook. It doesn't really matter what you use as long as it is something that you are writing down. And the way that you would construct your budget, number one, you want to write at the top of your paper or spreadsheet or whatever what your goals are, right? Number one, saving for college or saving for tires. Number two, retirement, let's say. And then you want to also, in that same, where you have those goals listed, you also want to capture your expenses and your income so that you can see where your expenses are going. All right, so for a moment, I just want you to think about this. Imagine that you're filling a bucket, like a sand bucket, with rocks, okay? So first you're gonna if you pour the little rocks in first, and then try to put the big rocks on top of it, it doesn't always work out, right? Sometimes you have big rocks and they're like hanging out of the bucket, or they don't all fit. you run out of room in the bucket before you can get the big rocks in. So then you dump them out and you're going to start over. This time you're going to put your big rocks in, which is your mortgage, your car, childcare, the ones I mentioned, utilities, and then you're going to put in the little rocks, which are everything else, right? How much, my Starbucks or my this or that, little things that you're spending. And when you do it that way, then everything sort of fits, right? If you've ever done these sandcastles at the beach, then you know what I'm talking about. This is the approach that you should take with your money. You want to first put in your fixed expenses. So when you're doing your budget, first write down your fixed expenses. And we talked about what those are, the things that don't change. They're the same every month. And then you want to write down your variable expenses, which are the little rocks, where you could make some changes. So when you take that approach, then you'll see you'll also put a rock in for yourself, right? When you do take this approach, you'll start to see that you have enough room. You really do, for everything to fit. It's just a matter of how you're prioritizing things. You'll use these sort of steps just when you decide exactly what you're going to write down, how you're going to track it. If you're going to track it in a notebook, or like what the process is for tracking your expenses. Are you going to enter them every day? Are you going to enter them in the moment, like immediately when you spend the money? And so this will help you get started. Okay. There are also sheets that we can send to Kate. She can get out to you that have things listed like this, right? They have groceries and then every day of the week, and then a total for how much you spent on the groceries that week, a weekly budget, that you might have set for yourself. So as an example, let's say you don't want to spend more than $200 a week or $100 a week on groceries. So then you would put in your weekly budget $100 in this weekly budget column. And then as you're spending your money, you start to see that, maybe you end up spending $150. So in your total expenses, it would be $150. And then the over under means the subtracting, right? So what we actually spent, $150 minus what our budget was, we were $50 over budget on that item. But then let's say we come down here to personal care, and that would be like nail or hair salon or something. Let's say we went and had that done and we came in under, right? We thought it was going to cost $50 and it cost $45. So then we have an under there. So that's what you're going to do on this type of sheet, is plug everything in and then look to see where the areas were that you overspent that month or week, and where the areas are that you underspent, and see how it all flushes out, right? So then you would total these columns to see what your actual week looked like and how much you spent and where you spent the money. Things like, I do want to make one comment about cigarettes and alcohol, just because it's important that you be real with yourself about what is a need for you versus a want. And I say this from experience. My mom is a very strong smoker and loves wine. Like, at her age, she's 74. That's really all she drinks is wine now. I don't consider her an alcoholic, but that's another conversation for another day. But what I will say is that is a big category for her. She has to have those things. When you sit down and talk to her, those are needs for her. And so when you're real about it and you don't say, well, I can cut back here, and then you acknowledge that may not be a realistic goal for you, those expenses do add up, and you want to make sure you account for them as well. Same thing, similarly, not the same at all, with your church, right? So if you're a person who is an avid church goer and you contribute to your church every week, then you want to also make sure you include that as well, because that's a place that your funds are going. And again, it goes back to values. That may be something that you say, I'm not changing what I do on that. That's what I do. And that's fine. You don't have to answer to anyone about it but yourself. So yeah. Here's an example of another sheet, right, which is a monthly sheet, right? So this is going to tell you on some of these entertainment categories what your goal is per month, that you would still write that in, and what you're averaging per month. And so it's just two different approaches. Whether or not you want to track weekly or track monthly is really up to you. Here's an example of that. And then you'll see these places where you've got some over and under situations happening, and where you can make a change. So example, dining out, your goal was 150 a month, but you're spending 200. So that's an area right there where you can say, oh, we need to get that back in line. So we need to make sure that we are not eating out more than a couple, 3 times a week, 2 times a week, whatever is realistic for you. Again, going back to the SMART goals. Okay. And again, we're at income minus expenses is how we stay on track. You should always have more income, even if it's just $1 more than what your expenses are. All right. So now as we're wrapping up, just a couple of reminders about how we can adjust the plan. So I've talked a little bit about these. I'm not going to go too full into depth about these, but these are the ways that you manage your money, right? Cash is an option, checks or a checking account. Debit card is different from an ATM card. So a debit card is tied to your checking account. You can use it at any vendor that accepts credit cards. A ATM card, you can only use at the ATM to get cash out. So sometimes people interchange those two. They are not the same. A credit card is something that is a mechanism that allows you, of course, to buy something now and pay for it later. And then savings accounts are, again, they're accounts that usually are interest bearing. They're accounts that are meant for you to leave money in them and only use it for unintended or unanticipated expenses that come up. To wrap up, we're going to talk a little bit about some budget busters. Maybe some of these apply to you, so think about them. Slow and steady drips. This is, something that you say, well, it's only 50 cents or it's only $10. But when you're doing it every day and every week, those little purchases add up fast. The second one, laziness penalties. This may be a late fee on a bill or a maybe you know that if you went to your bank's ATM, you wouldn't pay a fee, but there's a different bank ATM right in front of where you live. And so you just go there to get money out, but you're paying fees. So this is just something that happens because of, we're just lazy people. In general, people are lazy. And so this could also be, like a library fee or, something like that. Needless things. This is like books or magazine subscriptions or DVD subscriptions or something that you have that you know you have it, but you haven't canceled it yet. So maybe it's renewing automatically. Maybe you spent money on some clothes that didn't fit right, but then you never went to return them, even though you had the receipts. Like these are things that you need to think about as a way of tackling some of your money issues that you may have. Careless fines is my favorite. This is like speeding tickets. Replacing your sunglasses when you dropped them in the parking lot, right? Which is technically a careless, fine. This is fees for not paying on your credit card every month, like I mentioned, the minimum payment. So these are things that can easily be changed. Pity purchases. So this is a big one for women. You're feeling a little bit down. So you say to yourself, well, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to buy, some ice cream today, or I'm going to do this and I'm going to go to the store and get a new pair of shoes because it'll make me feel good. And it does make you feel good in the moment. But then later, when you're looking at your budget and you say, why did I spend that extra $30? That's where it will hit you. So, and then finally, impulse buys, which if you have children, that's the worst thing, right? You're in the store and they're like, I want this, I want that. Impulse buys are things that you really didn't need, or maybe you're like my family and we had ranch dressing, but somehow we ended up with 2 other things of ranch dressing because we thought we didn't have ranch dressing twice when we went to the grocery store. So those are things that we didn't need to buy, right? So these are things that can sabotage you if you're not actually tracking everything that you're spending, okay? All right, so first thing we're gonna do is think about our income. And when we're talking about adjusting the plan, here's a way that your plan can get changed is if you get a raise or lose your job, something with your income changes, that's a time to look at this plan and the budget and adjust. If you are decreasing your spending, you've decided you're going to go without cable for a while, you're going to postpone a trip that you may have wanted to take. These are things that might impact your budget. And then also those goals that we started out with, if there's a change to the goal, then it's a time to look at the budget and make a change to the budget. All right, and finally, as we're wrapping up today, stay motivated. So think about what will it look like when you can achieve your goal? I know you might want to actually even take a picture of what you're trying to achieve and put it on your fridge or put it on your bathroom mirror, someplace that you will see it every day so that you know what you're working towards. And keep going, right? There's going to be hard days. You're going to spend money on something that isn't going to be in your budget, and you are going to feel bad about it at some point. But keep going with the budget. Don't give up, because it really will pay off when you are able to learn how you're spending your money, what you're spending it on, and then you're able to make some changes. And be sure to reward yourself and celebrate your successes. So, I know that I teach these classes and I make okay money, at my job, but I got really excited last month because I was able to save $250 more than I was the month before because of some changes I had made. And so, that's something to celebrate. It's not something to celebrate by going out and spending $250. That's the note. But it is something to say, I did something good. I'm meeting my goals. I'm getting there, so be sure to do that as well. All right, so that is basically all of our presentation. I did want to remind you that in Alamance County, we do have 4 locations. Truliant Federal Credit Union has 4 locations. They include Burlington, Elon, Graham, and Mebane. And here's some of the directions to how to get to those. If you ever have any questions about checking accounts or those like rainy day accounts that I mentioned or anything like that, you can definitely look them up at truliant.org, which is our website. I should have included that here. Are there any questions? Be sure to unmute yourself or drop them in the chat if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to share about today's presentation. Does everyone feel like, well, let's do this. Drop in the chat one thing that you learned today that you didn't know. Okay. What to pay first if money is tight? Great. Better processes for planning a budget. Excellent. Good, good, good. Pity purchases was a new concept. Great. I need more income. Yeah, yeah. I thought Truliant was a bank and only federal employees can bank there. Thank you for sharing that, Roxana. Truliant Federal Credit Union is a credit union, we are a not-for-profit financial institution. All credit unions started with one company and have grown. Truliant started as the credit union for what was AT&T and Western Electric. And now we have more than 800 of those companies that belong to Truliant. But more importantly, for each of you, we have what's called a community charter, which means anyone that lives or works in the triad can join Truliant for only $5 to open a savings account. You don't have to be a federal employee or a state employee, which can be confusing because state employees, federal credit union is a credit union for state employees. So as an example, I'm also a state employees credit union member because my mother was a teacher and that allowed me to have a state employees bank account. But yes, we are a credit union, which is slightly different than, was very different than banks in that the biggest difference is that we don't have shareholders. We're not making other people rich. We're helping our members achieve their goals every day. So happy to talk more about that with you offline if you're interested. And so then Annette mentioned SMART goals. Yes, I love talking about SMART goals. That is a big deal. It can be life-changing because now I find myself always talking in SMART goals, right? So that's great that you learned that. I love that you guys learned something today. That always makes me feel good about doing these classes. So at this time, I'm going to drop into the chat my information in case you want to get in touch with me. And there is, I will say I am not a banker, right? I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a community engagement professional, but I can connect you with someone who could answer your questions if they're specific about a mortgage or debt consolidation or one of those rainy day accounts that I've talked about, okay? So just still reach out to me and I'm happy to introduce you to someone that can answer your questions specific to our products and services. And it looks like I'll be back with you, you guys in April to talk about credit card makeover, right, Kate? Okay. Thanks to each of you today. Thank you, Kate, for having me.
Truly our pleasure. Thank you for your time today, Renee. We appreciate each one of you joining us today and look forward to seeing you at our next seminar. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.